Good afternoon, everybody, or good morning, depending on when you're actually listening to this podcast. I'm really excited today. I've got a friend, colleague, and friend of mine that we're actually going to be having a good discussion with and conversation with, Justin Winstead with the Improver Group. And so, Justin, it'd be great. Thanks for joining today, first off.
Yeah, thank you for letting me be on this one. I understand this one's going to be played at the beginning of the year. I hope you weren't trying to save the best for last, because
No, what I'm gonna do, I guess I'm gonna set 2024 up with a really high bar.
there you go. I'll take it. I'll take it.
And then we're
Yeah,
just
good to
gonna
be
we're
with
gonna
you.
tee it up from there. So that'll be awesome. So I'm excited about learning more about Justin today, him sharing a lot of insights. But one of the things we wanted to do, Justin, since as you mentioned, this will be aired in January, will be released. One of the key things I'd love for you to talk to and get some insights from you is first all about yourself. How did you get started with the Improver Group? What's kind of the story between by you? And how you decided what was that catalyst by actually starting the Improver Group a few years ago?
Yeah, the quick story is I grew up really struggling financially. Came from a poor background. My dad was a high school dropout. My mom was a public school teacher,
Hmm.
and so money and business and things like that were really hard. But I had a big heart for people, and actually went into the Christian ministry is where I started out in life. And I thought my life was all about helping people via the church world and the ministry nonprofit world, and that's where I was engulfed in. And then somewhere along the way, light bulb came on and said, and I think there's actually a famous quote out there that says, "Where there is no mission, where there is no margin, there is no mission."
Hmm.
And I was like, "What does this mean, margin?" And I began to explore this as a young adult, and really that began the path of creating margins in my life, whether the margins be money or time or having more energy and emotional bandwidth to help and serve people. And I found out that you can create margins in business, and you can do it on your own as an entrepreneur, as a solopreneur, but it gets even better if you really utilize people around you. And I began to experience success in real estate and some oil and gas and insurance and different fields, did some retail and some restaurant. And the thing that I kept noticing is, man, it all hinges on people. It all hinges on who's around you, you know, who are the ones leading the charge, how is communication being handled. And so even though I loved business, I still had that old heartbeat for teaching people, for inspiring people, for them seeing the big picture, some of that stuff from my ministry world. And so really Improver is kind of a fusion of that on serving people, helping them think about life, helping them think about serving, helping them think globally and from that perspective, and helping them live within purpose, but also the business side of things where we're creating margins through performance and production and having higher retention. And so that's where the idea came from. So we launched it a few years ago under Improver Coach, added a networking element, an investment element. So now we're just like, hey, we're a grouping of different things. So here we are with the Improver Group. And right now, our main thing that we specialize in is leadership development, team culture training, and just working with individuals on getting the right mindset and executing on that in an efficient and effective way.
Great. Wow, that was great. It's always fun for me to do this because there's in what you just said in the last couple of minutes, I learned a lot about you as an individual that I didn't know. So that's one of the key things I think everybody that I have and I interview is I learned several insightful things about those people, and some of them I've known for 10, 15 years, so or longer. So it's just fascinating. So today specifically, we're here to talk about going into knowing that this will be airing in January. So leadership strategy 2024. And just as companies do a little bit of a reset year end, beginning of the year, what are your thoughts around, leadership, and if a company, if they haven't really done a lot around thinking about leadership strategy as being a differentiator for their business, what should they be thinking about at the beginning of the year around leadership and leadership strategy itself?
Yeah, this is a natural season for a lot of people. We go through this season in November of Thanksgiving and being filled with gratitude, and then we get into the fun festivities of the holiday season where there's a lot of joy and cheer and generosity. And then there's this moment as people begin to look into the new year where they're being reflective on what has been and kind of trying to imagine what could be. And really potential. They're thinking about, man, where was their potential? What should change? And one of the things that's common is that people want their reality to change. Everyone wants their results. They want to, okay, maybe I want higher profit margin, or, hey, we need to decrease turnover or increase retention. Like what, there's all these things that we want to see different. And that tends to be where our mind goes. But the question is, well, how do we actually get the different reality a year from now? What needs to happen in order to go from where I'm at right now to where I want to be? And if an individual wants their reality to change, they've got to change really their habits. Our reality and our consequences in life are shaped by the habits that we have, and we're a product of our habits. But if you want to change your habits, you have to change individual actions in those daily steps and tasks. But if you want that to change, you've got to change your attitudes and your beliefs. And so at the end of the day, this all starts in our mind. This is all as an individual, it's what are we putting in? What content are we absorbing? Who are we listening to? That shapes our mindset, our beliefs, and our attitudes, which lead to actions, which lead to habits, which lead to our results. So that's on an individual level. On a company level, the same thing is happening. People are looking at, man, as a company, what are all the things that we would love to be different at the end of next year compared to where we are now? And a lot of times we only want to focus on the plans and like these small tweaks. But leadership is really taking a step back and saying, wait, what is our culture? What is our vision? It's doing a heart check, because at the end of the day, if you still got the same mindset, the same attitudes, the same belief, the same vision, your actions and your processes and systems are just going to reflect that. So in the new year, if people want different results, they want to improve, they've got to start with leadership. They have to start with mindset. They have to start with culture. And if you work on that, the right strategies will come out of that. And from the right strategies, then you can focus on systems, processes, and individual behaviors.
Yeah,
does that make sense?
It does. It makes a lot of sense. So, there too, you put a lot, you put a lot of great thoughts into just what you just said. So where would you say now, is this something, because it does sound like it's a blend, like, you said it really starts with the individual, but for a company perspective, let's say it's a company of, I don't know, I'll just say off the top of my head, 300 employees. They have, their top leadership team has 10 leaders in their top leadership team. How would that group, if you're saying, okay, here's an example of a company, 10 key leaders who are really driving the long-term strategy of the company and growth, is there anything they should be doing collectively as a leadership team to make sure they're, the analogy of they're all rowing in the right direction?
Yes.
Versus actually going, going in a circle, to make sure they're actually aligned and in unison with that?
Yeah. So there's a couple of things. One is they definitely have to be healthy as leaders. And one of the challenges that we have right now in many companies is people are unhealthy in their own mind and in their own spirit, and they don't have healthy habits, and they don't have peace, they don't have vision, and they're trying to create a healthy company and organization from a spot of them being unhealthy. And as a leader, you've got to be able to pour into others, and you can only pour into others if you're being poured into and if you're learning and growing. So first off, you do have to start from a position of being a healthy leader. We call those 100X leaders, meaning you're 100%, not perfect, but you're 100% healthy in your habits and in your systems, and you're intentional. X means you can multiply that into others. So you start with the health, but then you've got to have the vision there. And a lot of people suffer from either having the wrong vision, or they have a vision that doesn't have specific goals and milestones attached to it. And so, the areas of reflection would be okay, as leaders, are we healthy, and where do we need to grow? But then what is our vision? Or is that still the heartbeat? Are we still pushing forward on that? And what needs to happen now in order to move that forward? And we've got to narrow that focus. One of my favorite books is The 4 Disciplines of Execution. And one of the reasons I love that book is because the first discipline is to identify your WIG, W-I-G. It's
Right.
your wildly important goal. And it's not goals, it's goal. And so the premise is, if you want to execute well, you've got to have a primary goal that if you accomplish that, everything else becomes easier, better. All of your other goals under that are more likely to happen. So, what is that main driving factor that if your team within the company or your company as a whole gets that done, it's a big hoorah moment? And so you identify that goal and you set a couple of measures that are within your control that you can focus on to reach that goal. And so that's where I think a lot of leaders should be thinking about this year. What are the 30 different metrics that are out there that we could put on our dashboard, but what is that one lagging measure, that one result we hope for this year? And then what are those 2 or 3 leading measures that we actually can leverage and we can influence to do that? And let's focus those inputs to create the outputs we want. Did that answer your question there? Is that helpful on it, or were you looking for something more tangible than that?
No. I think I would like to understand, because when you say one goal, the WIG, so what would be going into and reflecting on next going into 2024? What would be an example of what that one goal would be for a leadership team in your opinion?
Sure. Well, it's got to be something measurable, of course. And so the easiest one to think of is a revenue goal. And so if you're on a sales team or a growth team, that one's really easy to say, okay, this year there's either a number or there's a percentage of year over year growth that we are striving to attain. But at the end of the day, you can't control that number. That is the thing that you hope to get, but it's not 100% within your control. And that's why it's a lagging measure. It comes later, it's the output, but your leading measures are your input. So you could say, well, our goal is this amount of revenue. So what are the 2 factors that we can measure that are within our control to get that? So when I was running an insurance sales team, one of our goals was a certain amount of premium, recurring premium that we wanted to earn that year. Well, one of the primary drivers of that premium was referral partners. And our referral partners were real estate agents and loan officers. So our goal that year, even though we ultimately wanted revenue, we actually set a goal that particular year of new partnerships. But we can't make a realtor go with us. We can't make a loan officer go with us. But what we can do is we can make ourselves go on visits, and we can make ourselves do phone calls. So our leading measures were the phone calls and visits. Our lagging measure was how many new partnerships were formed. And so that would be an example on a growth side. This could be the same thing if you're not talking about clients, but you're talking about team members. Maybe you're in HR and you're like, we need to grow our head count by X number of people this year to sustain our company growth. Well, you can't make people the right fit come and be a part of your company, but what can you do? So work on those leading measures. So that would be one example as far as thinking about vision and goals for the year.
Okay, that's great.
If I were to dive into that just a little bit more too, what I would say is I'm really talking about strategy here, and these are techniques and tactics and strategies. But really, the world we live in our company is a step above that, which is if you work on the right leaders and you're developing your leadership, your communication, your alignment, you're creating self-awareness. Those kinds of things end up being the fruit of healthy leadership in your team. So again, you got to start from this position of healthy leadership. And that might be the strategy you need to do is say, okay, this year, our main goal is to implement some type of a leadership program with the hopes that it'll lead to these results.
Right. Interesting. So let me change directions a little bit. Hopefully it's not too much of a tangent, but what have you seen, and focusing again on leadership strategy and having healthy leaders, because I love that term. How do you find companies, because this is an interesting time, really the first time really the first time in history we still have 5 generations in the workforce. So where would you say that a healthy leader would be able to manage effectively those different 5 generations, because they all have different needs and desires? So how would a healthy leader and a healthy leadership team, is there some of the work you've done? Is there some proof on saying, if a healthy leader can effectively manage those different 5 generations, or is that just something that you still have to you still have to really focus on intentionally how do you manage those different generations because they all have slightly different needs.
Yeah, man, what a great question. And some of this could feel like semantics, but I don't think it is. When you talk about manage, many times when people manage, they're managing from a position of authority. And yes, there is authority on it, but that can't be the mindset and heart set of the individual. The individual has to think as the leader, how do I lead through influence, not manage through authority? Because
Mm.
managing through authority always it just backfires. And a lot of the unhealthy cultures that are created in companies are from insecure managers who are trying to use their position as a way of gaining leverage instead of growing as an individual and using influence. So you can lead through influence or you can lead through authority. And so what we coach on here is being a healthy leader. You have learned to balance two things to be a liberating, influential leader. And two of those areas are being the right amount of support and the right amount of challenge. And
Mm.
so when you're either managing up or down generations and different circumstances, it really doesn't matter because you're still asking that question, what challenge does this individual need and what support do they need? And if you're supporting them and challenging them in the right way, you're going to gain influence through them. If you're fighting for their good and you are trying to elevate them, which is what a good leader does, then it doesn't really matter age. Age comes into play when you get into these micromanaging, authoritarian type cultures, and those are really toxic on it. So even more specifically, I'll say we have three kind of areas. We call it the core. And so when we try to work on a leader's core, we're looking at three things. It's IQ, PQ, and EQ. So the IQ is what we do the least of because IQ is their task awareness and how intelligent they are on the job itself. And so most companies, that's when they think of manager or leader, that's really the thing that they're thinking about is, man, this person seems smart and they're really good at doing this job. And so they're sales and they're doing good at sales. So we should make them a sales leader or a sales manager.
Right.
Well, that's only one component of a healthy leader. To bring balance into that, you need to have EQ, which is an emotional quotient. That's your emotional health. And you need to have PQ, which is a personality quotient. And it means you're aware of personalities, your own and others. So creating self-awareness and others' awareness, in addition to whatever the task is paramount to creating a healthy culture of leadership and growth.
Really great. That's fascinating, Justin. So, you know what? We're going to take a short break right now, and then we're going to pick up with Justin from the Improver Group in just a couple of minutes. So thanks for listening, and we'll be back in just a couple of minutes. Thanks.
You want to grow your business, but people issues are getting in the way. Managing the people side of your business is complex and can feel overwhelming. Does this sound familiar? At HR Catalyst, people strategy is our business. We create and implement a people strategy with you so you can get back to growing your business. HR Catalyst was founded in 2013 with the goal of bringing the best-in-class HR practices to small and middle market companies. We are your outsourced strategic people experts. We help you solve the people issues in your business that are slowing you down. If you have HR concerns, you can schedule a complimentary call on our website at hrcatalystconsulting.com.
Justin, thanks so much. I know we just came back from a quick break, so thanks so much for what you've initially shared. And wow, it's fascinating because you have so much to share that it's a lot of information to pack in here, but you're doing a great job in actually bringing some key points to forward, I think, for our audience that's listening today. One of the next things I wanted to do, so in your opinion, because the focus of a lot of the companies that we work with within HR Catalyst, middle market size companies, typically less than 200 to 300 employees or smaller. So how well do you think middle market size companies actually implement a leadership strategy or really focus intentionally on their leadership period?
Well, of course, I'm generalizing here, but the thing that I've observed is that there's not a clear leadership strategy. There is a promotion strategy in the sense of, well, if this person can do some task well, then we want to elevate them systematically through the ranks. but that's not the same as growing leaders and having an intentional strategy. It seems that most people feel like, well, leadership is just purely organic and you just kind of have it or you don't, and it's just you kind of catch it, but you really can't be intentional. And it's like, no, leadership development is something you can do on purpose. It can be intentional, and there can be a strategy, and should be a strategy behind that.
Now with that too, is it so again, let me just go. I'll go back to my example company. So 100 people, let's say 200 people, 10 leaders or so within that organization. Do you feel like, and since you do this with the improver group, do they have to spend a lot of money to be able to create this healthy leadership environment? Where would they start? Because I do love the concept of having a healthy leader, because if that individual is not healthy, they can't be a healthy leader. So what would that process look like? And what do just back of the envelope math, what kind of an investment would that organization need to make?
That is it's a broad question, and it's a hard one to answer because there's so many different circumstances that companies are in and different markets that they're focused on. Uh, and really, it's even hard to say that there's some rules of thumb, but I would say on the average, everyone should be spending, even if their company is not willing to do it, you should be spending at least 3 to 5% of your income should be focused on your own personal growth and development, because if you're spending at least that, then you're going to get a return on that. In fact, I think Brian Tracy had a rule about that. Maybe he said 7% or something, but that 3 to 5% I think is kind of maybe the best idea of a baseline on that. But really, there's a philosophical belief about the leadership development cost that I think is wrong. And really what it has to do is a lot of companies see this as an optional expense. This is almost like a splurge, or it's a luxury item, and they don't see it as a necessity. And so it's strange. They go, man, why is our turnover so high and we're having a hard time retaining these incredible employees? Or why are we having such a hard time attracting top talent? And then at the same time, they don't want to invest in having better, stronger leaders and healthier cultures. And so I believe that when you invest in your leaders, it's the best investment that you can really make into your business, and you're going to get an exponential return if you're investing those dollars the right way.
No, and that's so true, I think, because again, depending on what level of leader it is, the amount of influence they have within the organization is huge, because they work, in some cases, that organization they lead could be 25, 50, 100 people. And so the impact of that person is, if you're not starting out with a good starting point at the base of that first leader, that more senior level leader, then of course the numbers, the lack of leadership, or that person's incompetence in leadership, will just be exponentially multiplied throughout their organization. So what would you say here is, so having a leadership strategy, is that a system? Is that a process? Is that both? What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I mean, it really is all of those. And again, that kind of is the thing that we're trying to combat, is this idea of just winging it in leadership. Like,
right.
we just hope people either have it or don't. Well, maybe we can identify it, maybe we can't. So one part is being intentional about it and realizing what are those core components that really mark a healthy leader, and are there ways to evaluate that? Something that companies run into is they want to use data to help guide their decision making, but you get into things like leadership topics and personal growth, and now it gets harder to measure, because like, how do you measure how good of a leader someone really is? And so our company has been able to develop some tools, along with a partnership with a giant worldwide, is the name of the company we've partnered with. And we have tools that can really measure the things that maybe were previously thought to be immeasurable. So part of the leadership strategy in the new year is, how do we put some metrics on these topics, like your team performance and your leadership, like measuring communication as an example, or how well is the team really executing, and the alignment, can you measure alignment? And so if you have a good leadership strategy, you can actually measure those things that maybe feel a little bit vague. And then you can have courses and content and information to help strengthen those areas that are not performing at the area that you would want to. So we do a lot of online courses is one of the ways that we are able to help companies with their leaders. So we've got Fortune 100 companies around the world are using our materials, but so are small businesses as well. But we can assign actions to certain employees. So if they're dealing with working in a hybrid environment or managing stress or dealing with conflict, we can assign them courses that are really practical and really helpful to help them grow as a leader. And I think the last thing I would add on to this is creating a common language within your company is part of what creates your culture. So being systematic and consistent with your leadership is really important. So sometimes people pull a book here, a speaker there, a thing, and it's just real haphazard. And so, yeah, that's better than not doing anything at all. But a really healthy leadership strategy is, well, let's create one where there'll be some consistency, where a year from now, people wake up and when they say certain words, everyone around the table knows what those words really mean, and they know the impact of that, and it creates for better efficiencies and effectiveness.
Right. Oh, wow. That's wonderful. So what can happen if what can happen to derail or fail or either derail a program or make a program fail around leadership strategy that, they have good intentions like a lot of us do in January, a lot of good intentions about working out, about eating right, getting this amount of sleep. But what from a leadership perspective could actually derail the process for them? What are some of the things you've seen there in your experience?
The biggest one by far is no follow-up or follow-through. And so we've all done the things where you go attend the deal. It felt good in the moment. The weekend happened. You put the thing in the drawer and then you never visit it again.
Right. Sure.
And it just didn't feel like anything. And so developing a strategy says, wait just a minute, this is not just a one-off, or these aren't just siloed events, but this is a part of a plan. And that plan also includes follow-up and follow-through, and accountability is really paramount. Of course, having great content to start with is really good. And part of what people do is, yeah, your team needs inspiration and motivation. And there's old Zig Ziglar story that I love to share, which was Zig was doing this big event, thousands of people there, and somebody criticized him after the event, and they said, Zig, the problem with your motivational stuff is it just doesn't last. And Zig said, yeah, we think of it kind of like bathing. You should do it often. So
Yeah.
it was a good retort. And there is something about that. Motivation is important. But part of the things that derails good intentions is only having motivation. And it's not enough just to be motivated and inspired, and then because that fizzles. And even if you reignite it, it's still not enough. So we try to hit the 3 E's, which is enlighten the mind, encourage the heart, equip the hands. So a good leadership strategy in the new year is when we do these training events, we do a workshop, a coaching session, however you set it up, you need to think, what can we teach them so they learn something new? How can we inspire and encourage them so they feel better? And then what resources can we put in their hand to actually utilize this on Tuesday so it makes sense? And then have an accountability follow-up process. Those are some good ingredients of a great leadership strategy.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. So have you found that are there certain type of companies or certain industries that you found it's really difficult to implement a leadership strategy in?
So as a whole, I've not seen it be task focus or industry specific. It's really more of a culture of whatever is being built. I mean, so you could say, well, people in the fast food industry, they really don't aspire as much in this leadership space. But yet one of our top clients is Chick-fil-A. And, they have an incredible leadership culture. And, so it doesn't matter blue collar, white collar, the health industries. Of course, we probably see the greatest gains in those industries that tend to be maybe financial service oriented, health and wellness oriented, because those people many times understand mindset, vision, and they're already growth focused, and they're trying to maintain a certain sense of health and wellness. But really, a good leadership strategy, everybody needs it, and everybody should have it.
Right. So if there's a business owners listening to this, business owners are listening to this, what are the top three? What are the top 3 reasons would you tell them that they need to get started now and not put this off and wait till next month or the month after?
your profits, the future of your company depends on the culture that you are building. And your culture is defined by your leaders. And so if you're progressing your company down the road and you don't have a good foundation on it, all you're doing is you're going to become a victim of your own success. So each day, it's just like our own bodies. Our DNA is working, and we're either building up the body or we're tearing it down. We're either making our bodies healthier or unhealthier, and we're doing that with our companies as well. So you need to start today because the long-term health depends on it. Secondly, is the hiring environment is so volatile right now. Attracting top talent and retaining your best employees is so valuable. And so you need to make investments in them. All of the data shows that people want to be poured into, they want to learn, they want to grow. The technology and social media and things have changed the way people interact, but the ability to connect relationally and be leaders is something people want to know more of how to do. And so, yeah, your health and people need it for your team. And ultimately, whoever your end client is, they need you to be healthy. They need you to be a healthy leader. They need you to have a healthy culture, because your product or service is going to be a result of that, ultimately that health from the top. And so the people you're serving, they need you.
That's great. Thank you so much for this conversation. This has been very insightful as always. Are there any last thoughts you wanted to share regarding leadership strategy before I kind of turn over to get to know you a little bit better before we wrap up? Any last comments or thoughts you wanted to share?
I would just say get a plan. You got to have a plan. You need to bring in somebody from the outside. Even if you have people inside that work on this, it's always good to have a third party perspective on it so that you can, when you bring in somebody like us in our firm, when we do leadership training, the leader gets the benefit of not only absorbing it, but they get to observe their teams. And so don't forget how important it is to partner with great companies who can come in and they specialize in this. That'd be one thing. The second thing is I want to invite those listening to go to our website, and there's a free assessment. Like I mentioned earlier, how do you measure these seemingly immeasurable leadership characteristics? Well, one of the assessments we have is your leadership voice. And so you can discover what type of leadership voice do you have. So improvergroup.com, you can take that for free. And you do this 5 to 10 minute long assessment, and it's going to tell you which of the 5 leadership voices best describe you. And then I want to challenge you as a leader to step into that voice and begin using your leadership voice to be a better leader.
That's great. Now, thank you again for your time. But now, a couple of things we want to find out, have a little bit of fun, want to find out a little more about you. So 3 books. So if my time on God's green earth was numbered and I could only read 3 books before I was no longer here, what 3 books would you recommend?
Oh man, that's a tough one. I've got a bunch of them behind me and a whole shelf in there. But some of the 3 of the top books that I recommend to people is I love QBQ. We run into people all the time who they don't read personal growth books. And QBQ you could read in 30 or 45 minutes, or you could read a chapter a day. It takes less than a minute or 2, and you can finish it in a month. And that book is about responsibility and taking responsibility, not procrastinating, not blaming. I love Who Moved My Cheese. That's another classic about adaptability. And so I got to throw that one there. And man, this last one is tough. I've got so many. It's a tie between the 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership by John Maxwell and then the 100X Leader by Jeremy Kubicek and Steve Cockram. And those are all about being healthy leaders.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. I'll let you have 4. So
Yeah.
how about 2 podcasts? I'm not sure if you're a big podcast listener, but 2 podcasts that you listen to on a regular basis.
Yeah, so one of the podcasts, and I'm forgetting the name of it right now because my system is, but it's Craig Groeschel's leadership podcast. And one of the things I like about him is he's so much more concise than I am, and he's able to like really pack a lot of meat into a few words. And so it's a fantastic podcast. And then this other one may surprise you a little. It's not really leadership focused. It's actually a podcast called The Art of Manliness. And anybody can listen to it. It's really good, but there's just so many cool, I mean, it goes from poetry to history to philosophy, but then also how do you do a fireman's carry, or how do you do this or that? And it's just a really engaging podcast.
That's great. And last thing here, last question for you is, so given today, what would you tell your 16-year-old self?
Mm. I would tell my 16-year-old self that your future is determined by the content you absorb and the connections you make. So absorb the best content you can and work on making meaningful connections.
Right. Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. With that, so Justin, if people wanted to reach out to you and find out more about you yourself or the Improver Group, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, so LinkedIn is a good one. So you can just look up my name, Justin Winstead. Improver Group also has a page there. Facebook, on Facebook as well. Of course, I mentioned our website earlier, improvergroup.com. And my email is justin@improvergroup.com. So yeah, reach out to me. I'd love to be in touch. And the first conversation that we can have is just complimentary. We can discover like where are you and where do you want to go, and if we can serve you in that, we're happy to. But I'm also happy to point you in other directions if somebody else has a better resource for your needs than what we have.
Great. Okay, thanks again. That was wonderful. So appreciate that. I hope people, as you can understand, as you saw here, Justin has a great amount of information to share, works with a lot of great companies and individuals to help them improve themselves and their efficiency and effectiveness. And so with that, Justin, appreciate your time again, and we'll look forward to seeing you soon. Thanks. Take
Thanks so
care.
much.
Bye-bye. Thank you.